The assembly will please come to order. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. Assemblywoman Black. Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblywoman Carlton. Assemblywoman Cohen. Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblyman Ellison. Assemblyman Flores. Assemblyman Frierson. Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Assemblywoman Garlow. Assemblyman Hafen. Assemblywoman Hanson. Assemblywoman Hardy. Assemblywoman Howdicke. Assemblywoman Kasama. Assemblywoman Krasner. Assemblyman Levitt. Assemblywoman Martinez. Assemblywoman Marzola. Assemblyman Matthews. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Brittany Miller. Assemblyman C.H. Miller. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Assemblywoman Nguyen. Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblyman Orlicker. Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblyman Roberts. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Assemblywoman Thomas. Assemblywoman Titus. Assemblywoman Tolles. Assemblywoman Torres. Assemblyman Watts. Assemblyman Wheeler. Assemblyman Frierson. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Assemblyman Wheeler. Speaker Pro Tem Yeager.
Here, Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. May the record reflect that Speaker Frierson and Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong are absent excused. We have 40 members present.
The record shall so reflect there are 40 present, 2 excused. There is a quorum. The assembly will please rise for the prayer by Pastor Nate Johnson, The Crossing, Las Vegas.
Good morning. Let us start our day with the idea of serving others. There's a great moment in the life of Jesus where, knowing he was the most powerful and important person in the room, he washed everyone's feet. Imagine that. He chose humility. What does humility look like for you today? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, provide us with the incredible task of humility in all we do and say today. That instead of pointing to our titles, popularity, credentials, that we lower our own egos and pride in place of humility. That kindness, genuine care, and love for one another will win out. Instead of using our power today for our own gain, that we use it in service to others. That we remember the beautiful conversations that we had in our districts and those in need. Even on this Developmental Disabilities Awareness Day, where self-advocate buttons will be worn, let us be mindful of those who are looked down on, pushed aside. We pray these things in his name. Amen.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order business 2, reading and approval of the journal.
Carson City, Monday, March 15th.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move to dispense with further reading of the journal and authorize the Speaker and Chief Clerk to make necessary corrections or additions, or Speaker Pro Tem and Chief Clerk to make necessary corrections or additions.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Order business 8, motion, resolutions, and notices. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I would move to take ACR 2 from the Chief Clerk's desk and refer it to your Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Assembly Joint Resolution 10, introduced by Assemblyman Watts et al., Senators Harris and Neal, proposing to amend the ordinance of the Nevada Constitution and the Nevada Constitution to remove language authorizing the use of slavery and involuntary servitude as a criminal punishment.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move to refer AJR 10 to the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Assembly Joint Resolution 10 is referred to the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
Notice of exemption, March 16, 2021, the Fiscal Analysis Division pursuant to Joint Standing Rule 14.6 has determined the eligibility for exemption of Assembly Bills Number 149, 196, 265, and 285. Sarah Kaufman, Fiscal Analysis Division.
Order Business 9, first reading and reference of bills.
Assembly Bill 288, introduced by Assemblyman Hafen, Senator Hammond, an act relating to education, revising provisions governing pupil eligibility for grants provided by a scholarship organization and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 289, introduced by Assemblyman Hafen, an act relating to deceptive trade practices, prohibiting certain interactive computer services from restricting or removing certain content and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 290, introduced by Assemblywoman Howdigy, an act relating to financial institutions, revising the definition of the term fiduciary for the purposes of certain provisions relating to the business of a trust company, authorizing funds held in a fiduciary capacity by a savings bank to be swept to the deposit accounts of the savings bank under certain circumstances, imposing certain requirements on savings bank relating to funds in a fiduciary account administered by a savings bank that are awaiting investment or distribution, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 291, introduced by Assemblywoman Peters, an act relating to non-competition covenants, providing that a non-competition covenant is void and unenforceable against independent contractors in certain circumstances, providing that a non-competition covenant may not restrict an independent contractor from providing service to a former customer or client in certain circumstances, limiting the enforceability of a non-competition covenant against an independent contractor in certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 292, introduced by Assemblywoman Carlton, an act relating to unemployment compensation, eliminating provisions that make a person ineligible for unemployment benefits under certain circumstances related to the person's separation from his or her next to last employer, eliminating the requirement that the next to last employer of a person be notified of a new or additional claim for unemployment benefits filed by a person under certain circumstances, eliminating the prohibition on the charging of benefits to the account of the person's next to last employer if the person left the employer to take other employment under certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 293, introduced by Assemblyman Wheeler et al., Senator Settlemeyer, an act relating to gaming, reviving an exception to authorize certain organizations to operate a charitable lottery without registering with the chair of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 294, introduced by Assemblyman Yeager, an act relating to insurance, prohibiting the prevention of recovery under an insurance policy or annuity contract based on any misrepresentations, omissions, concealment of facts, or incorrect statements unless they are substantially related to the claim for which recovery is sought, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 295, introduced by Assemblywoman Hanson, an act relating to common interest communities, revising provisions relating to the maintenance and availability of books, records, and other papers of a unit owners association, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 296, introduced by Assemblywoman Wynn, an act relating to crimes defining certain terms for the purposes of the crime of doxing, establishing the crime of doxing, authorizing the victim of doxing to recover damages, reasonable attorney's fees and costs in a civil action, authorizing a court to issue a temporary restraining order, a permanent or temporary injunction under certain circumstances, providing an additional penalty for doxing motivated by certain actual or perceived characteristics of the victim, providing penalties, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 297, introduced by Assemblyman Titus et al., Senator Settlemeyer et al., an act relating to elections, providing that a register of voters is an elected office, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 298, introduced by Assemblyman Flores, an act relating to vehicles, requiring the Commissioner of Financial Institutions to prescribe forms to use in the leasing of vehicles under certain circumstances, setting forth certain requirements for a non-commercial vehicle lease, revising the definition of the term vehicle lease for certain purposes, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Assembly Bill 299, introduced by Assemblywomen Bilber, Axelrod, and Titus, an act relating to wildlife, providing for the issuance of a salvage permit to certain persons for the salvage and possession of certain animals hit and killed by a motor vehicle, imposing certain requirements on a holder of a salvage permit, authorizing a peace officer to make certain inspections, prohibiting a person from selling, bartering, or exchanging the carcass of such an animal, providing that a peace officer, agency, employing a peace officer, and the Department of Wildlife are not liable with respect to any use made of the carcass of such an animal, prohibiting the salvaging and taking possession of such animals from the reservation lands of any Indian tribe in the state, providing penalties, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 300, introduced by Assemblyman Levitt, Senator Hardy, an act relating to taxation, establishing a credit against the modified business tax for a taxpayer who donates money to a youth and adolescent enrichment program in the state, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 301, introduced by Assemblyman C.H. Miller et al., an act relating to motor vehicles, requiring a tow operator to immediately release to the owner at no charge a vehicle that has been connected to a tow car or that has been towed for certain reasons related to the registration of the vehicle if the owner provides proof that the vehicle is registered, revising provisions governing certain fees for towing a motor vehicle, requiring the owner of real property or authorized agent of the owner who requests that a vehicle be towed from a residential complex to make reasonable efforts to notify the owner or operator of the vehicle of the date and time after which that vehicle will be towed, requiring a tow operator to independently verify the registration status of a vehicle before towing the vehicle in certain situations, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 302, introduced by Assemblyman Summers Armstrong et al., an act relating to legislative measures authorizing the Nevada Commission on Minority Affairs to request the drafting of not more than 2 legislative measures for each regular session of the legislature, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 303, introduced by Assemblyman Summers Armstrong et al., an act relating to employment, removing certain exceptions relating to the requirements for an employer in private employment to provide paid leave to each employee of the employer under certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 304, introduced by Assemblyman Frierson, an act relating to law enforcement, revising provisions governing the standards for programs of continuing education for peace officers, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 305, introduced by Assemblywoman Titus, an act relating to education, revising provisions governing the budgeted ending fund balance of a county school district fund that is excluded from collective bargaining negotiations, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 306, introduced by Assemblyman Ellison, an act relating to education, prohibiting the reporting of false information to the Voice Save program, providing in certain circumstances for technical assistance and support to appropriate persons when the program is misused, requiring in certain circumstances a support center to include in a statistical compilation certain information relating to the misuse of the program, providing penalty, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 307, introduced by Assemblywoman Martinez, an act relating to employment, requiring the preparation of informative notices by divisions or other units within the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, requiring the director of the department to require certain employers to post such notices in the workplace, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 308, introduced by Assemblyman Frierson, an act relating to property, revising provisions relating to late fees, revising certain definitions used in the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, revising provisions relating to notices of increases in rent, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. Assembly Bill 309, introduced by Assemblywoman Dickman, an act relating to unemployment compensation, requiring the legislative auditor to conduct an audit concerning the 2021-2022 interim of the Employment Security Division of the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation relating to its controls and processes, making an appropriation, and providing other matters properly in there too. Assembly Bill 310, introduced by Assemblywoman Considine, an act relating to real estate, requiring an applicant for a permit to engage in property management to provide certain information concerning property management agreements when the applicant applies for a permit or the renewal of a permit, and providing other matters properly laid there too.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move that Assembly Bills 288 through 310 be referred to the committees as shown on Assembly Bill introductions dated March 16, 2021, of which all members have a copy of on their desk.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Order of Business 11, second reading and amendment of bills.
Assembly Bill 101, introduced by Assemblyman Yeager, an act relating to veterinary medicine, authorizing a licensed veterinarian to administer to an animal a product containing hemp or CBD, which contains not more than 0.3% THC, or recommend to the owner of the animal the use of such a product to treat a condition of the animal, prohibiting the Nevada State Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners from taking disciplinary action against a licensed veterinarian or the facility in which a licensed veterinarian engages in the practice of veterinary medicine on the basis of the administration or recommendation of such a product, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
The bill is ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 173, introduced by Assemblywoman Hardicke, an act relating to professional regulation, revising provisions relating to the exemption from licensure as a professional engineer for employees of certain public utility companies, revising provisions relating to eligibility to take certain required examinations for licensure as a professional land surveyor, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
The bill is ordered to general file. Order Business 12, general file and third reading.
Assembly Bill 145, introduced by Assemblywoman Cohen and Senator Orenshaw, an act relating to judgments adopting the Uniform Registration of Canadian Money Judgments Act and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 14, end of Section 14, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Assembly Bill 145 establishes procedures for the recognition and enforcement of Canadian money judgments in Nevada by adopting the Uniform Registration of Canadian Money Judgments Act. The bill provides that recognition of a Canadian judgment only applies to final and enforceable judgments to recover money. This bill authorizes enforcement of the judgment in the same manner and to the same extent as a judgment rendered in Nevada.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the chief clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 39 ayes, 1 nay. The bill having received a constitutional majority, I declare it passed and ordered to the Senate.
Senate Bill 83, introduced by the Committee on Education, an act relating to education authorizing the Department of Education to temporarily waive or pause certain requirements related to the statewide system of accountability for public schools and certain examinations or assessments if the United States Department of Education has waived or paused similar requirements of federal law, providing certain exceptions to provisions that require the use of a statewide system of accountability or results of an examination or assessment, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 12, end of Section 12, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 or the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Marzola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Senate Bill 83 authorizes Nevada's Department of Education to temporarily waive or pause the requirements relating to making ratings for public schools and administering certain federally required examinations that measure the achievement and proficiency of students if the United States Department of Education allows for such waivers or pauses. The bill also makes conforming changes to other related statutes.
Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the chief clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? The chief clerk will record the vote. There are 38 ayes, 2 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority, I declare it passed and ordered to the Senate. We'll go to Order of Business 13, unfinished business of the preceding day. There being no objections, the Speaker Pro Tem and Chief Clerk will sign SCR 2. We'll now go to Order of Business 15. Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order Business 15. Sorry, Mr. Pro Tem.
Order of Business 15.
Thank you, sir. Today, I rise in acknowledgement and celebration of Developmental Disabilities Awareness Day, and I ask each of you to join me. I am proud to share this proclamation honoring the accomplishments of people with diverse abilities who have made and continue to make invaluable contributions to the state of Nevada. Prior to joining this body as its newest member, I had the honor of escorting many self-advocates from districts around the state to visit with many of you, our distinguished legislators. They were excited to have the opportunity to travel from their home districts, often for the first time, excited to sit in the gallery and to meet in members' offices. The time legislators spent to engage those visitors proved that they had value and their opinions mattered. You helped people with developmental disabilities to find their voice. Debbie bought new shoes just for that occasion. They looked amazing sitting on the footrests of her wheelchair. Reggie made new friends all over the building. He still asks about coming back. Scott and James are ready to run for governor. The impact on their lives was significant. This chamber is one of the most diverse legislative bodies in the country, and part of embracing our diversity is also being inclusive of all people with disabilities, their families, and the people who support them. Today, each of us, the 40 legislators in this chamber, are accompanied by a self-advocate from our individual districts, albeit virtually. They are pictured on your button. Today, they are watching us. It has been 30 years since the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, but that was simply the beginning. People with disabilities still face great barriers to achieving equality and inclusion. Many of the provisions included in that landmark legislation have yet to be realized. As we continue to work on improving access, accessibility, inclusion, and equality, let us celebrate people with diverse abilities and their incredible contributions to our community. Today, I ask each of you to join me in celebrating Developmental Disabilities Awareness Day 2021. As my friend Caitlin says, let's forget about the dis and instead focus on ability. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Order of Business 15?
Order of Business 15.
Thank you. Today is Equality Day at the Nevada Legislature. We are here to advocate support for more than a dozen pro-equality bills that will impact the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. We are here to celebrate and acknowledge contributions of the LGBT+ community members in our state. Before we continue, I want to highlight the trailblazer behind the LGBTQ+ Equality and Equality Day in Nevada, former Senator David Parks. Senator Parks has not only been a fierce pro-equality champion in Nevada's local government, but he's also been a fierce and tireless advocate in the community. As he retired, Senator Parks concluded his monumental career on a high note when he helped pass a sweeping set of pro-LGBT+ bills that helped move equality forward for all people throughout Nevada. I also want to mention that last year, USA Today said that Nevada was one of the best places to live for the LGBT+ community. That's in large part due to the work of Senator Parks, his supportive colleagues in the legislature, and my colleagues in the Senate and Assembly who have taken the baton. With that said, we are also here to listen. It is important that the legislative body listens to the needs and priorities of the LGBT+ community in Nevada. Thank you so much to the Nevada Equality Coalition for working in partnership with diverse organizations across our state to make today's event possible. Nevada is a leader in the fight for full lived LGBT+ equality, and I hope to advance LGBT+ civil rights and social justice, especially for peoples of color and gender diverse Nevadans. Thank you.
Any other order of business 15? Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and I do have one quick order of business 15 because today it is Nevada Youth Legislature Day. Yay! And so we want to recognize the enthusiasm and civic engagement of our amazing group of Nevada high school students. These outstanding leaders are members of the Nevada Youth Legislature, and they engage in the highest level of representation in the legislative process. The NYL, as we like to call it, by those in the know, was created in 2007 through legislation sponsored by Senator Valley Weiner, and its primary mission is to give Nevada youth an active voice in government. Since its creation, state senators work with their assembly members and have appointed more than 210 high school students to represent the youth within each Senate district throughout the state. During their 2-year term, youth legislators participate in monthly half-day trainings that teach us skills such as listening, constituent outreach, messaging management, negotiating, not tripping over floor statements, and many more. During the second year of their interim, youth legislators learn through training and hands-on experience to draft bills, to take an idea from creation through advocacy and hopefully through passage. This year, you're going to see Nevada youth legislator members participate as witnesses during committee hearings on SB 108. On a historic note, the Nevada Youth Leadership Program is the only one in the state, the only such program in the state that is afforded a bill every session. So we're proud of the Nevada Youth Legislature and greatly appreciate its impact on Nevada, and they are thankful as well to the assembly members who sit on the board and help engage with training during the process. Throughout the years, others have also appreciated and recognized the unique and exemplary impact of the Nevada Youth Legislature. At this time, I would like the Assembly to recognize the Nevada Youth Legislature and acknowledge the importance of their ideas, their hard work, and their ambition. On a personal note, I want to say that when I was on the board and I attended one of the meetings, it was when the youth had to elect a president. And so I sat there, and when they opened nominations, I was very much amused and enjoyed the fact that every single member nominated themselves to be president. And I thought, these are great kids. They're smart, they're ambitious, they're Nevadans, true and true. So if we could acknowledge them and give them a round of applause, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. Seeing no other business before us, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I would move that the Assembly stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 17th, 2021 at the hour of 11:30 a.m.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson has moved that the Assembly stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 17th, 2021 at the hour of 11:30 a.m. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.